Okay, the second half of today's meeting is, of course, our speaker. And I've just been asked to introduce him. I'm thrilled to do it. You guys are going to have the benefit of my publisher. I am so happy that I'm part of the Artemisia publishing team. And Geoff has been in the business better part of 20 years. And he's a traditional publisher and has a long list of fine writers, and I aspire to be one day, that he has been working with for a number of years. I could go on, but he's going to kill me. I would like to introduce Mr. Geoff Habiger.
See if, can you guys hear me okay? It sounds like the mic is working. My name is Geoff Habiger. I am the co-owner, senior editor, senior everything at Artemisia Publishing. As Joe mentioned, we've been around for a while, and let's see if the technology, it's weird. Next week. As Joe mentioned, we're a small independent publisher located here in Albuquerque. We've been publishing since 2004, so not quite 20 years, but close enough. And it's been a really long time. In that amount of time, we've published 70 books by upwards of 40 authors all over the United States, here in New Mexico, as well as international as well. We have authors from Canada, Mexico, as well as Finland currently, although he's English. So in that time, we've had our books receive upwards of 100 different awards and honors. Feedback. Thanks. And we publish in multiple genres, fiction and nonfiction, and we currently have 2 imprints for our publishing house. Kinkajou Press is our early reader, middle grade novels, fiction, and then Shadow Dragon Press handles horror, fantasy, science fiction, and the like. Go ahead. Just so you're getting an idea, some of our recent titles from this last year and what we're publishing so far this year. Some you may recognize. Joe's book is up there. Lynn's book is up there. My book is up there, so as well as some new stuff coming out this year. And that's just halfway through the year. We've got a full year of titles that we'll be publishing. And then I've already got 4 scheduled for next year. So, all right. So what is this topic about? We're going to be talking about newsletters. What are newsletters? We had Sam mentioned earlier what a traditional newsletter is like. So we're going to cover a little bit about that. Types of newsletters. Bulk of this talk is going to be about what you would put in your newsletter. So things that you would include. How to send your newsletter in the 21st century, primarily through electronic means, how to get that out there. And then the big one, or the one that a lot of people really struggle with sometimes, how to get people to subscribe to your newsletter and actually follow you. So go ahead. All right, first question before we get into this, I'm just curious, who here, and you can, I don't know if people online can chime in or how, who has a newsletter currently? Who puts out a newsletter on a periodic basis? I see 2 hands here in currently. I don't know if there's anybody online who has newsletters. So I didn't see anybody from Southwest Writers, but you guys count. You guys put out a newsletter. I know you do, Sage. So, if you're not familiar, a newsletter is a periodic bulletin or a letter that puts out news, events, information about a group, whatever you want, to society, to an organization, for business, whatever it might be. What goes into that newsletter, it should be relevant to the people who subscribe to it, and the material should be timely. You don't want to put out a newsletter that talks about an event that happened 3 weeks ago, that kind of thing. So Next, please. Types of newsletters, just as a general, and there's many different types, but there's kind of I just put together 4 general categories. Business newsletters, you may get some of these already if you do any kind of online buying these days. You almost always get put onto somebody's newsletter, and they are then going to send you information ad nauseum daily about services, sales, coupons, promotions, and the like. Those are the business kind of newsletters. A society newsletter, basically for a group of people who share similar interests. So maybe you belong to a gardening club or a hiking group or a writers group. And to share news and information about that group, what the group members are doing, meetings, events, those kinds of things. News, if anybody subscribes to any kind of news organization, if you subscribe to a newspaper, you may get a condensed newsletter from that paper on a daily basis, giving a synopsis of what news is going on, what their articles are, that sort of thing. And then personal newsletters. It's a newsletter about you, what you're doing, your likes, interests, etc. Oftentimes, especially amongst creative types, artists, musicians, authors, you're going to blend that probably with a business, okay? Because it's going to contain information not only about what you're doing, but trying to get people to buy your product. Next. So those are the types of newsletters. So what should you include in your newsletters? As an author, especially, you're going to want to talk about your books. That's kind of the point of your newsletter, is to talk about what you are producing. What is your content that you want people to purchase, to download, to buy, to read, to whatever. So talk about your books. And don't just talk about it as a sense of, here's my book, please buy it. But you want to engage with your readers and introduce your followers to the different aspects of your book. Who are the characters in your book? Give us more details and more information. Don't just say what you put in your actual story or the novel, the book, whatever it was, but give us more details. Give us the background, the history. Who is that person? What are their likes and dislikes? Those kinds of things. Where is your book set? Where are the locations? What kinds of places do your characters go? What do they do when they go there? World building is essential to especially people who write in fantasy and science fiction genres. You can go ahead one more step. But it also works for people who may write in, say, historical genres as well. Talk about the languages, customs in society. What were people doing for food, music, and entertainment? What kind of religions were going on? What, especially again in science fiction and fantasy type genres. But like I said, that works very well with if you write in historical genres. I mean, you did all of the research to make sure that the information in your book was right for that time period. Share that information. Share the little tidbits that you spent hours and hours and hours researching to write one line in your novel. And we've all done it. Come on, raise your hands. You've all done it. So where you've sat and researched and bought other books and spent hours researching the information to put one little scene or one little bit in your novel. Expand on that. Put that information in your newsletter and talk about it. So, additional things to include, talk about you. That's what this newsletter is for, right? Is to promote you. Oftentimes we hear it talked about that you as an author, you're not so much selling your book, you're selling yourself. You are the brand, right? And so you want to make sure that you talk about who you are, what is your brand. So talk about what your writing process is. What is inspiring to you? What got you into writing? What gets you out of your writer's slumps, writer's blocks? What are the things that you are currently working on? What's upcoming? Anything that you are planning on doing, vacations and trips you've taken. One of our authors that we've published in the past year, and we're publishing her next book this summer, Jennifer Bonhoff. I don't know if anybody in here knows her, but she writes middle grade historical fiction. Last year, she took a walking tour of Switzerland. And I know she included pictures and photos of that trip in her newsletter. mainly because I follow her. So, those kinds of things. But you also want to include things like events that you're going to be attending, where you're going to be speaking at. So if you have followers who are from that area, if you are taking a book tour to Oklahoma and Arkansas, you may want to include that information in your newsletter. So followers from those areas can come out and see you in person. So talk about the world around you. Newsletters don't have to be only about your writing and only about your books, okay? I follow a lot of different authors, follow their newsletters and get them. They talk about the different things that they are doing just in the world. They're talking about current events and trends that have been out there, whether it's the latest craze or the latest issue that might have come up. I myself just recently did that, our February newsletter for myself and my co-author. We talked about the trend lately of the use of ChatGPT and other open AI type things of creating AI work, creative art, writing, that sort of thing. And honestly, it's a big issue amongst the writing community, among the artist community. Not so much musicians yet, but it wouldn't surprise me that it's coming. And so that's an important thing. It's a current event, it's topical, and it's very relevant to me as an author to talk about that and to mention where my stance is on that particular trend in technology. And for those who want to know, my stance is no to AI. I don't use it. I don't use it in art. I don't use it in the writing, and I will not accept AI generated content. So, yeah, not only just because it's bad, because most of it so far is bad, but at some point in time, it's going to get better. I just don't believe in the way the process currently works as far as the algorithms that they use on creating the content. So anyways, sidebar. But talk about those things that are relevant to you as an author, okay? Talk about causes you support, especially if they are causes related to things in your writing. They may be literary type causes. They may be causes related to libraries or whatever. Maybe you're a big believer and want to talk about pet adoptions and the like. We just lost our... Yeah. Oops.
Geoff, have you had any submissions from AI?
I have not. Not that I know of anyway, so. No, but the latest thing was, if anybody follows science fiction, especially for short form science fiction, there's the magazine Clark's World, and they've been around for about 17 years. They recently had to close submissions because they got inundated. It started with like 50 in December, and then they got like over 100. And then by February, they were getting upwards of 1,000 submissions. And when they started looking into them, they could tell that they were all AI generated. And it's part of a trend out there of people looking for side gigs. Oh, make easy money writing kind of thing. All you have to do is go to ChatGPT and enter in keywords, and it'll spit out a story, and you can submit it. So yeah, so it's happening out there. So luckily I deal with long form, so it's a little bit harder for people. It takes a lot more work to put out a full novel, but it can be done. So yeah. So
The lines can be so blurry. What a machine does, what a human does.
yeah, it can. So, I mean, that could be an interesting topic just in its own right. So
Spring call, everybody.
yeah. So
It may be, we're calling that because their screens went out first and then our screen went up here. It looks fine up here, so they should be here any minute. So if you want to take some more questions?
yeah, I'll take a couple more questions as we get into this, if anybody has a question on anything we've covered so far. So
This is why we don't trust AI.
yes, no, this is one of them. Yeah.
Well, you're like a publisher. What is, do you have a newsletter?
I do have a newsletter, so.
What is that?
Our newsletter as a publisher is business focused. We talk about our the material that we are upcoming stuff. So like if we've signed new authors, we'll highlight those. If we know that an author is going on tour, we'll try and put that information in. A lot of times I try and get authors to, I'll give them short interviews and I'll include those interviews in the newsletter. But we also include information about upcoming titles. So I usually highlight the next 2 titles that are coming up. I always have ebook promotions every month. And so I include links to those for people for those ebook sales. And then I try and get interest by including giveaways. So I do book giveaways with autographed copies of books. So one screen came back. As far as nonfiction, it depends. So far, most of what we've published as nonfiction lately has been baseball related. Yeah, it just kind of happened. And we've done memoir types as well. Our next release next month is baseball. It's a baseball biography. So it just depends. We're back. Okay. So where was I? Oh, causes you support, encourage your followers to support you. Thank you for your patience for those on you online, because I don't think they experienced any problems. So, and then other things that you can do, give reviews of books, music, and movies. Not just of your books, but things that you've done. We're writers, but we're also readers, most of us, I hope so. You know, so if there's a particular book that you've come across that you've really enjoyed, include a review about that. If there's a movie or some music that you really enjoy, talk about it. Find ways to engage with your readers, with your followers. No. And to that end, engage with your followers.
Please repeat the question. For those of us out here, we cannot hear what they're asking you.
Oh, okay. We will do that. Thank you. Ask questions. A good friend of mine puts out his own newsletter on a periodic basis, and he always tries to ask a question within his newsletter to try and get engagement from his followers. You know, encourage them to send you an email, direct message, whatever it may be. Share fan art. I follow, I've been a big fan of the authors Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child for many, many years. If you're not familiar with them, they write a series of novels featuring a FBI agent called AXL Pendergast. If you're not familiar with those books, they're wonderful. And I've been following their newsletter for years. And they put out all sorts of fun little tidbits, interviews with their characters. At New Year's this year, they had New Year's greetings from different characters, which are always fun because some are happy to do it and others aren't, which is interesting when it's their characters. But they also have been doing a lot of, they get a lot of people generating fan-created art for their characters, and they share that art in their newsletter, which is always fun. Talk about things, you know, beyond just your writing. If you have pets, talk about your pets. Share pictures of your pets. Honestly, people love pets. So, talk about your hobbies. If you do other things beyond writing, you know, so if you do photography, gardening, whatever it may be, talk about it, include it. It doesn't have to be the entire content. It could be one particular newsletter that you talk about, you know, and you know, or it could be just a little bit. If you are doing something and you want to keep people appraised of a particular progress on something, maybe a garden or maybe something you're building, just talk about it. You know, again, this is just a way to engage and try to create that engagement with your readers, because our readers, while they're interested in our books, they're also interested in us. And again, it's a part of being your brand as an author. Who are you? One thing to do is you want to make sure you offer giveaways as a good way to create readers and followers is to offer a giveaway. So whether it's signed copies, free books, whatever it may be, you know, that's part of marketing and being able to do that. And then share exclusive content. Go ahead and one more click. Short stories, essays that you've written, anything that you may have not published, but you've written. So that kind of exclusive content is good information to have. If you are doing other kind of creative activities, you create your own artwork, if you do photography, include those things as well. Other ways, again, to engage and create things for your followers to be interested in. So those kinds of content can lead into other ways of generating marketing. If you're familiar with the site Patreon, where people can sign up and follow you, they become a patron of you for a small subscription fee. These are the kinds of things that you would put out there on your Patreon page for your followers, you know, to say, here's this latest short story that I wrote, and that kind of information. And if you write a short story and it's 7,000 words, break it up. Make each one 1,000 words, make it a serial. And now you have 7 pieces of material that you can put out instead of just one. Think about ways of doing that. So, and it can be odd little bits. For my own newsletter that we do as an author with myself and my co-author. As I said, last month, we talked a bit about the AI stuff and how it's impacting this the writing community right now. This month, this newsletter, we included a bit of exclusive material, a brief little short story, 1,000 words long, about our characters and stuff that happens outside of the regular novels, the regular story. But it's something fun. It's a way for us to stay creative. It's a way to create that connection so that our followers can read about it and go, oh, here's something new about the characters. So, and it was also fun. So earlier, Sam mentioned that he has a newsletter that he mails out in the traditional old way of doing things, of printing it out and sending it out in the mail. A lot of newsletters these days have almost all gone electronic, mainly because it's a little bit cheaper, not a lot. You're saving on printing costs for sure, but certainly that mail cost, the cost of buying stamps that you might put on a newsletter to mail it out there, is still kind of out there in the sense that you're paying somebody, a provider, to send that to people's email addresses. So we'll talk about that just a little bit. But there are service providers, and these are sites that you can use both to create your content. They will provide templates so that you can put all of the information that you want to put into your newsletter. They also offer ways that you can add subscribers to your newsletter to make it easy for people to join and follow you. They give you analytical data about your newsletter. So when you send it out, you can get information about how many people actually opened your newsletter, who clicked on links, which links did they click on, where did they go, that kind of information. And that's a way that you, as opposed to the bigger companies, can actually mine some data about your followers. So what kind of information can you glean? What kind of content can you create to maybe generate more interest? Most of these providers provide free services to get you started, and then they offer plans that you can pay for usually on a monthly or an annual basis for to put out your newsletter. So go ahead and go to the next. So these are just some of the newsletter providers that are out there. The simplest thing, if you're ever curious, you can go to any online search engine and type in newsletter service, and it'll show you a whole bunch of people, and they will have people talking about the different newsletter services, and they rank them. And so, but these are just some of them. Some you may have heard of, such as MailChimp and Constant Contact. Those are probably the 2 biggest in the industry, but there are many others. Mad Mimi and Cake. A lot of these offer free services. So if you have a few number of followers you can do it for free, which is nice as you build that list. But at some point, you're going to get over a certain number, either a certain number of emails that you can send out or a certain number of contacts that you are trying to send to. And at that point, those companies will start asking you to subscribe to some kind of a plan. So one of them there, Tiny Letter, is a totally free service. You don't pay anything, no matter how many contacts you have, but it's very, very basic. It's a very basic, what you see is what you get kind of content. So, there's not a lot of bells and whistles that go with it. But if you're looking to put out a very basic, very simple newsletter, that's a good way to go. So, as I said, there are many, many other types of newsletter providers. Again, the idea behind them is that you get people to subscribe to you and to follow you. They will usually have to provide an email address. You provide this information to this provider, and then whenever you send out a newsletter, they just send out the emails for you, which is, you could do that yourself, but it's a lot longer and a lot harder and takes a lot more time to do it. So, if you're going to choose a provider, things to consider, ease of use. You need to find a provider who's going to offer services that can be easy and intuitive for you to follow and to use. And that's probably true of any kind of technology, whether it's a word processing program, a cover design program, whatever, any kind of marketing program. That's the kind of thing that you want to make sure is that, do you understand it and is easy for you to use? Or do they offer good IT type services? So if you call up or send them a chat or an email, they can help you figure out what's going on. Most of the services that are out there these days offer very simple, easy to use drag and drop type services where all you have to do is click on an element, put it in your newsletter, and there it is. You can then customize it a little bit. You want to create a button that takes people to a particular page on the web. Here, put this button in, make a couple of changes to it. Now you've got the button in your newsletter, right? That kind of ability is out there. And a lot of them offer very set up templates as well. If you want a template on creating a business newsletter here, and they put all of the fields in there, and you just have to go in and fill them in. And says put a picture here. Okay, put a picture there. Here, type in this field. You type in that field, and then boom, it's all ready to go. Analytics and reporting. As I mentioned before, these are tools that can be used to help you understand how your email campaigns are going. Most of the sites out there offer some form of analytics, and some are better than others. MailChimp offers one of the best analytics out there, in my opinion, but there are other sites. And sometimes all you may be curious about is knowing how many people open my newsletter. That's all I care about, right? But you may want to dive into it, especially if you're offering promotions, sales, that kind of thing. How many people clicked on a particular link? What was that link? And you can also set it up so you can try and say, I'm going to word it this particular promotion this way. How many people clicked on the link then? If I word it differently, do more people click on it? You can actually dive into that, and that's a lot of what marketing does. So you have that ability depending on which service you use. But knowing how to use the analytics can give you that information so that you can also then cull out the deadwood from your list. If you get a lot of people who join your newsletter all at once, say through some kind of an event, or you did a promotion and a lot of people joined your newsletter, over time, whether those people subscribe or unsubscribe from your newsletter, some of them may stop opening your newsletter, right? Because you get inundated by them. And some people just stop doing it. And so you may want to just get rid of that deadwood, those people who no longer are interacting with your newsletter. Because since you pay often on the number of contacts you have, you want to get rid of the contacts that are not valuable to you so you can add more. So affordability is another thing that you want to consider. As I said, most of those providers offer free services to begin with, but at a certain point, After you've hit a certain number level of contacts or a certain number of emails that you're going to send each month, they're going to start asking you to pay. And so you want to know how much are you willing to spend for your newsletter. So just because it's part of your marketing budget. As an author, as a professional author trying to run a business as an author, it's marketing. And so you just need to make sure that you've budgeted that for your whatever, marketing budget that you want to have. So, how do you get people to sign up for your newsletter? There's not one answer to that, and it's not ever easy. I wish it was. There's a lot of different ways to try and get people to sign up for your newsletter. And all of them give you something. None of them will give you large amounts of people, at least out of this particular grouping here. Encourage your social media followers to sign up for your newsletter. If you already have a social media presence, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the new ones out there, what are they, Post, Mammoth, and something else now. Encourage people who follow you there to also sign up for your newsletter. It may happen, it may not happen, it just depends. So create a compelling landing page. If you're not familiar, a landing page is a site where you give people a web address, and when people go to that address, they can then click on a link to sign up for your newsletter. Oftentimes those are set up with incentives, say, sign up for my newsletter and get this free story. And you can set up the process so when they click on it, they then can sign up for the newsletter, and then they will get an email with, here is the free story, right? So that way it's an encouragement, a way to get people, if you do this, I will give you this, right? So that's generally how it works. Use sign-up sheet at in-person events. Just because you're at an in-person event doesn't mean you can't get people to sign up for your electronic newsletter. Back in the day, you might ask people to sign up and give you your mailing address so you can send them your, paper newsletter. But these days, just, give me your email address and you can follow and learn about all the things that I'm doing. So again, you can, those kind of trickle in, as you do the events. A lot of people may sign up for things. Again, you can also use incentives in that fashion. I have this free story right here. I printed it out at Kinko's and it's stapled together. If you want this free story, sign up for my newsletter. Then boom. So, so they get something for free for their email address. So again, people have to understand that they know that they're going to be then getting emails, and they're always going to have an option to stop getting your newsletter, but it's a way to generate that content. So, or to generate those contacts. So one thing about landing pages in converting people that way, you can make it very, very simple. Click on a button, sign up for your newsletter, and you're done. All right. A lot of the providers out there will offer basically their sequences of events. So as an event happens, the program then will do additional things at certain times that you've set in there. So you can say, after a person signs up, 1 day later, send them this email that says this, and encouraging more kinds of things. Or you can set it up so that after a certain amount of time has happened, if they haven't signed up for or downloaded the free book, the free story, send them this email and saying, hey, I noticed you haven't done this. Don't forget, this is still here. That kind of engagement. Some people will set it up so that as soon as they send an email, people sign up for their newsletter, they send an email out automatically that says, hi, thank you for joining. This is who I am. Here's my basically author bio. This is who I am. And then a day later, they say, here's my stories. Here's what's going on. Here's the characters. Then a day later, another email comes that says, here's the world that I've created. So that you can plan this out and you can set it up. It'll take some time in the beginning to get all of that done. But once done, it can then be set up automatically. So when anybody signs up for your newsletter, you know that they're getting this information. So, and it's a good way to introduce yourself, introduce your characters, People will set it up where they actually have introductions from the characters. The characters themselves are speaking to the people saying, hi, I'm glad you joined us. I'm so-and-so, and this is what I do. You know, that kind of engagement, you know, so that people will sit there and go, ah, okay, they're more interested, they're more engaged, they're feeling like they're getting something out of giving you their email address. Next. The other way, this way can generate a larger number of contacts to your newsletter list. And these are things to do, for example, newsletter swaps. There's also newsletter builders out there. Newsletter swaps are essentially a thing where two authors get together and they go, hey, I have a newsletter, so do I. Can you talk about my newsletter and your newsletter? Sure. And, you know, and that's basically what a newsletter swap is. You know, an author offers to mention your book, your newsletter in their newsletter, and it goes out to their followers, and people will go, hey, this author that I like says that they like this other person here. They like their writing, they like their whatever. Maybe I should click on it as well. And they click on it and they can sign up for your newsletter. So that's generally how a newsletter swap works. Newsletter builders are usually paid services where you sign up for something and they may offer a service or a giveaway. A provider might say, we will send an email out and everybody who signs up is going to get into a drawing for a $50 gift card, an iPad, a computer, a bundle of 500 different things, whatever it might be, right? And how much they give away depends on how much you're willing to pay, right, for that service. But people will then, to get into that giveaway, has to sign up for your newsletter. It generates a lot of contacts very quickly. The problem is keeping them. So, you know, a lot of people will do that because they're wanting to get whatever free item that was in the giveaway that was being promised. And they like to do that. But once they've signed up, they may open your newsletter a couple of times, but people will fall off. They'll either stop, you know, opening your newsletter, they may unsubscribe, whatever. But you're going to have some out of that list who are going to continue to follow you, who are going to continue to engage with you and your writing. And a lot of that is going to depend on what content you put into your newsletter. You know, how engaging are you? Is it worth their few minutes a day? I mean, because come on, I mean, we get a lot of emails every day. We get a lot of stuff just deluging us. And how do you balance that with the stuff that you need to do, like writing your next best-selling novel? So, but those are ways that you can do it. And there's some sites out there. These are just a few of them. Story Origin is one. I don't know if anybody who's on Story Origin here currently. I am. I know a couple of authors who are. Story Origin offers newsletter swaps, landing pages, engagements, giveaways, and those kinds of things. Aconite Cafe does similar things, as does Book Sweeps. LitRing is a little bit more trying to engage through both newsletter swaps as well as offering those builders. They're also set up to do things by genres. So you can specify, I'm looking for people interested in mysteries or romances or science fiction fantasy. And they offer different things or different services, different promotions throughout the year. So just keep in mind, there is a cost pretty much for all of those. You know, Story Origin is, what is it, $10 a month or $100 a year? You know, not a lot, but if you're struggling and not earning a lot of those royalties coming in from Amazon, could be, you know, a little bit more, but keep that in mind. So one thing to keep in mind too is, as I mentioned, like Amazon or even on social media, there are ways that you can, on those sites, if you have an author page on Facebook, you can have a link on your author page for people to sign up to your newsletter, right? Put the link on your author page. If you're not using your author page on Amazon Central, then we should have a different talk. But you know, if you're selling on Amazon, complete your author page. And under there, you can put information about how to sign up for your newsletter as well, so people can follow you that way, right? But anyways, most of these other services for swaps and builders and the like do have a fee associated with them. And many of them are genre specific, right? And that's important. I mean, if you're writing a romance, contemporary steamy romance, you don't want to sign up for a newsletter builder that is offering a package deal of, science fiction books, right? Unless your steamy romance is a science fiction as well. But, but if it's a contemporary steamy romance, you're not going to sign up for a science fiction newsletter builder. You're going to look for one that's dealing with romance. Ideally, one that's also dealing with steamy romance, not the more, contemporary or just, what's the other term? Steamy and then, huh? Sweet. So anyways, those are different ways. There's a lot of different ways that I haven't mentioned here. There's a lot of different creative people who offer things. You can, if you're good friends with another author, you guys can do your own newsletter swaps and try and figure out ways to build on things. It's a lot of this is about how you connect with the wider writing community of authors that are out there. If you're published through a publisher, you can try and see if they can do the same equivalent kind of thing. Hey, if I have a newsletter, I as the publisher can talk about, if you're interested, follow this author that we publish, right? So newsletters blend engagement with your followers, try to make sure that they're fun and creative. And that's what I have. So I think we have time for questions for anybody, both online and here.